If you're a fanatic of the unknown, unfamiliar, and enjoy creepy tales in story format, then welcome to Gravesend. That's all we do here. We upload 1 to 2 times weekly, so don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button at the bottom and ring that bell for all notifications. Now on with our story. Jake and Gina were a typical happy family with 2 children, Annie, age 9, and Davy, age 6, with a loving dog named Spud. Jake owned his own auto repair shop, and Gina worked part-time at a local cafe in town. Jake and Gina had been saving a long time for their dream home. They sacrificed a lot, even their family vacations, to put back every dime they could for that dream home. One day while Gina was working, her realtor called and said she had just gotten a listing for an amazing house that exceeded what they were looking for, and it was definitely in their price range. Gina told her she was interested and scheduled to meet her after work to look at the house. When Gina arrived at the address, she was amazed at what she saw and thought she probably wrote the address down wrong. It was a beautiful Victorian home with a wraparound porch, breathtaking gazebo, 2 balconies, and a huge yard. The landscape was perfectly sculptured around the property, with several flower gardens that were absolutely radiant. Gina continued up the drive and saw her realtor's vehicle, so she knew she was at the right address. When Gina first walked into the foyer, she felt a little uneasy. The uneasiness grew stronger as she toured the house, but she figured it was probably because it was such a big house, and she never dreamed she would have an opportunity to live in a house so luxurious. This house was 3,400 square feet with 5 bedrooms, 3 full baths, and had a huge backyard for the kids and Spud, and it also had an in-ground pool and garden fountain. Gina asked what the asking price was, and when the realtor told her, Gina couldn't believe it. She explained the owners were moving overseas and needed a quick sale. Gina wanted Jake to see the house before moving forward, but she definitely didn't want to miss a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She told her realtor to go ahead and put in the offer. When Jake got home, she told him about the house and drove him over to take a look. She didn't have a key to get inside, but she knew when Jake seen the house, he would fall in love, just like she did. Once they made it up the driveway, Gina noticed the front door was standing wide open, but there were no cars in the drive. Gina wondered if maybe they didn't get the door closed good earlier and the wind possibly blew it open. She and Jake walked up on the porch and called out just in case the owner was inside, but no one answered. They rang the doorbell several times and no one came to the door or acknowledged them in any way. Gina called the realtor to let her know the door was open. The realtor told Gina she had locked the deadbolt and no one else had keys. The owners were out of the country. She told Gina they could look inside, but to be careful and make sure the door was locked and closed when they left. Just like Gina, Jake was amazed at how big this house was and loved the big yard. He told Gina he was a little concerned with the pool because of the kids. Gina assured him it had an electric hard cover and the switch was inside the pool house, so the kids wouldn't be able to get in the pool without supervision. When they walked inside, Jake had a terribly uneasy feeling. He was on guard as they walked through the house, just in case anyone who wasn't supposed to be there popped out. As they started up the stairs, Jake's feeling of uneasiness grew more intense. He yelled out, "Is anyone here? You better tell me now." Luckily, no one responded, so Gina and Jake continued upstairs. As they reached the top of the stairs, Jake became even more uncomfortable and felt a little sick to his stomach. When they walked into the last bedroom on the right side of the hall, his stomach started cramping so bad he was doubled over, and all of a sudden he became pale. Gina asked what was wrong. He told Gina it must have been something he ate at lunch, and he could possibly have food poisoning. He told her he needed to go. Jake went and got back in the car. Gina closed and locked the front door and walked around to make sure everything was secure before leaving. When she got back in the car, Jake's color was back and he said he was feeling much better. Gina asked if he wanted to go to the ER, and he said no. He honestly felt better all of a sudden. Whatever it was left as quickly as it came. Gina laughed and jokingly asked, "Are you allergic to the house?" Jake started laughing and said he must be, but if so, he would get over it. As Gina was backing up to turn the car around, she was talking about how much she loved the balcony. She glanced up toward the balcony and immediately slammed the brakes. Jake asked what she was doing, and Gina told him she thought she had seen someone standing in the glass doors, but when she looked back, no one was there. Jake told her someone may have been upstairs and told her to call the realtor back and have the police come out and check the house. About 3 weeks later, they closed on the house and were finally able to move in. On the day of closing, the realtor told them the owners had decided to leave all of the furniture and asked if they wanted it. It didn't increase the price, so Gina graciously accepted. The house was full of beautiful antiques that were worth a fortune by themselves. Since the house was fully furnished, it didn't take them long at all to get moved in and settled. The kids had a big day. They were so excited about the new house. Davy spent most of his time running around in the backyard playing, and Annie spent most of her day working on her room, getting everything set up just like she wanted. She couldn't wait to invite her friends over. Their first night in the house, everyone was exhausted, so Gina ordered pizza. Everyone ate, then went to bed. Gina was a little concerned about Spud, though. When he first got to the house, he seemed excited, but when she opened the door to go inside, he started growling and would not step foot inside that house. She thought it was unusual behavior for Spud, but figured it was just because he wasn't used to the house yet. Spud stayed out in the doghouse. It was June and very warm outside, so he was very comfortable. The next morning, everyone was well rested, and after breakfast, Gina told them they were spending the day at the pool. Everyone eagerly ran upstairs to get ready for the pool. As soon as Annie got to her room, she started screaming and immediately ran into Davy's room, yelling and screaming at him. Gina ran to the room to see what was going on. Annie's room was destroyed. Everything she had done the day before was now undone. Annie blamed her brother, of course, but he was adamant about not even going inside her room. He told her he went downstairs the same time she did and hadn't been back up. Gina was puzzled, but she told everyone they were going to help out and get the room back in order so they could get out to the pool. Everyone had a great day, but it was time to go in and get ready for dinner. Gina tried to get Spud inside the house, but again, he stood at the door just growling and wouldn't come inside. Gina told Jake she didn't know what was going on, but Spud would not come inside. Jake picked him up and sat him inside the door. Spud went crazy, growling and barking, jumping on the door, scratching, trying to get out. Gina and Jake didn't know what to make of it, but they let him back outside. Gina went upstairs to shower and change before starting dinner. While she was in the shower, she heard someone come in the bathroom. She assumed it was Jake, then saw a shadow through the curtain and knew it wasn't Jake by their size. She yanked the curtain back and no one was there. Gina shook her head and finished showering. She was getting out of the shower and reached for her towel, but it wasn't laying on the sink where she had put it. It was laying on the other side of the bathroom on a shelf. Gina knew she had laid her towel on the sink. She mumbled to herself, "I must be going crazy." Gina called everyone for dinner. She asked Jake and both of the kids if they had come in the bathroom while she was showering, and everyone told her no. Gina thought to herself, she must be going crazy. Gina didn't sleep well that night. She tossed and turned until around 1 a.m. She kept thinking she was hearing footsteps, cracks, and pops. She finally dozed off, but about an hour later she woke up and heard Davy talking. He was laughing and she could hear him playing with his radio control car in the hallway. She looked at the clock and it was 3 a.m. Davy knew better than to play with his car in the hallway on the hardwood floor. And why would he be up at 3 a.m. playing in the hallway? Gina got up and went into the hallway. The radio control car was sitting at the end of the hall, but Davy wasn't there. Then all of a sudden the lights on the toy car came on, and the car started slowly rolling down the hallway. It started gaining speed as it got closer to Gina. Gina yelled for Davy to stop and to come there right away. The car finally hit her foot. Gina kicked the car down the hallway and headed for Davy's room. She grabbed the knob and slung the door open, expecting Davy to be standing there with the controller in his hand. But the controller was lying on the floor, and Davy was in bed. Gina yelled for Davy to get up, but he didn't move. She turned on the lamp, and Davy looked like he was asleep, but of course Gina thought he was playing. Again she yelled his name and shook him. He finally aroused a little and said, "What, Mommy?" Gina asked Davy why he was out in the hallway playing with his radio-controlled car. He knew better. Davy looked confused. Then he told his mom he wasn't playing with his radio-controlled car. He had been sleeping. Of course, Gina didn't believe him and grounded him for 2 days. The next morning, Gina made her coffee and went out on the patio to enjoy the early morning sunrise. She was reading the paper and glanced up to see someone running around the corner of the pool house. It looked like a child, but she didn't get a good look. She quickly got up to go investigate. When she reached the end of the patio, she saw that the flowers in several of the floral gardens had been pulled and were just lying on the ground. Now Gina was very upset. She knew the neighbors in the next house over had a little boy Davy's age because they had come over to welcome them to the neighborhood. Later that afternoon, Gina walked over to the neighbors to address the vandalism. She didn't know for sure if it was their little boy, but it only made sense. They were the closest neighbors, and the person she saw was running toward their house. She rang the doorbell, and the little boy's mom, Karen, came to the door. She invited Gina inside, and they had tea. Gina finally got around to addressing the flower gardens. Karen told Gina they had never had anything like that happen in the neighborhood since they had been living there. She then said, "You probably think it was Mikey, but I can assure you it wasn't. He's at his grandparents' this weekend." Gina, with a slightly humiliating laugh, said, "No, I didn't think about it being Mikey," and she was just wondering if they had issues with vandalism in the neighborhood. They finished their tea, and Gina went home. Over the course of the next month, little unpleasant and unexplainable things continued to happen, but they weren't malicious or too scary. Mostly annoying because there was no rational explanation. Jake and both of the kids had begun experiencing little things as well. But Jake, he wasn't a believer, and he tried to rationalize and explain everything away. He would get angry when Gina would try to talk to him. One afternoon, Davy ran into the den where Gina was watching TV and began telling her with a sense of urgency about this little boy who was in his room playing with his toys. He told Gina he had seen him before, and the little boy would talk to him, but he was so scared he wouldn't talk back to the little boy. Davy told her he knew the little boy wasn't real. He was dead. Gina reflected back to the night the radio control car was running up and down the hallway. Gina immediately jumped up and ran upstairs to Davy's room. Every toy Davy owned was in the floor, but no one else was in the room. Gina figured Davy had pulled all of his toys out and was trying to get out of cleaning his room. Again, she scolded Davy and told him to clean up his room. Davy argued for a few minutes, but finally gave up the fight and screamed to Gina that he got the blame for everything and he didn't do it. Then he stomped off into his room and slammed his door. Gina was getting concerned about Davy's behavior, but figured it was just his age, and he was going through one of those childhood phases like we all go through. So she just brushed it off and went on with her day. Now Spud still wouldn't come inside, so he was staying in the backyard all of the time. They couldn't figure out why he wouldn't come in the house. He stayed inside all of the time at their previous home. After breakfast, Gina told Annie to go out and feed Spud and give him some fresh water before they headed to the mall. Annie went out, put food in his bowl, and gave him fresh water, but she couldn't find Spud anywhere. She called him for several minutes before going back inside and telling her mom Spud was gone. Gina went out and called for Spud several times, then told the kids to get in the car. He would probably be home when they got back. They headed to the mall to do a little shopping and went to the food court to have a little lunch before heading back home. It was still early, so the kids wanted to swim before dinner. Gina told them they could, so as soon as they arrived at home, Gina and the kids ran upstairs to put on their swimsuits. Gina unlocked the pool house to get to the switch to roll the pool cover back. It started rolling back a little, then seemed to get jammed. Gina didn't know what to do to fix it, so she told the kids they would have to wait until their dad got home. Of course, the kids weren't happy, but went back inside to watch TV. After about an hour, Annie went upstairs to her room. Annie started yelling for her mom, and Gina went running upstairs. Annie and Gina almost ran into each other. Annie was out of breath, crying, and being hysterical. Gina was frantic and asked her what was wrong. Annie told her there was a little boy in her room playing with her stuffed animals. She said he pulled them all out and they were everywhere. By this time, Davy was there listening, and he started yelling, "See, Mommy, I told you. You wouldn't believe me, but you believe Annie, don't you?" Gina ran into Annie's room, and every single one of her stuffed animals were lying on the floor, all over the room, but again, there was no sign of a little boy. Davy told Gina he was scared of the little boy. He said he was mean and evil. This really concerned Gina that Davy would say something like this. She believed Davy and Annie saw something, but she couldn't figure out what they were seeing and how they were both seeing the same thing, if it was just their imagination. They both described the little boy the same. Pale skin, round face, blue eyes, and dark hair. They said he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and his clothes had something red, like dark paint, all over them. After dinner, Gina told the kids to go upstairs and get ready for bed. After they went upstairs, Gina started telling Jake about the little boy both Annie and Davy had seen. And she also told him about the night the radio-controlled car was running up and down the hallway by itself. Jake started laughing and said, "Come on, Gina. They're both at an age where they're teaming up on you, making up stories and playing pranks." Jake told her they were probably upstairs laughing about it now. Gina told Jake little things had been happening to her too that she couldn't explain, and she knew something was going on. Gina told him she didn't want to argue, and he just needed to go check the switch for the pool cover. Jake grabbed the keys to the pool house and headed outside. Gina finished the dishes, then went out. Jake was just standing there glaring into the pool. Gina realized Jake had tears in his eyes when he turned and looked at her. As she got closer to the pool, she knew why. Spud was floating in the pool. He had drowned. Gina started screaming hysterically at Jake. "Now do you believe me? The cover's been on the pool the entire time. There was no way he could get in. How did he get in there? Now do you believe me?" Jake told Gina to stop screaming and calm down. He didn't want the kids to see Spud like this. Gina told him to take care of it and ran into the house. She quickly pulled the blinds on the sliding glass doors so the kids couldn't see outside. They were running down the stairs to see what was going on. Gina caught them at the bottom of the stairs and told them their dad was trying to fix the switch for the pool cover and they couldn't go outside. Gina glanced up, and a little boy, as Annie and Davy had described, was standing at the top of the stairs with a menacing grin on his face. Gina gasped as the little boy slowly faded away. Jake called the police and filed a police report. The police told Jake this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Jake asked what they meant, and they said several animals had died in the pool, and every time they were told the pool cover had been closed. Now Jake was really concerned about what they told him, and figured this is probably why he was so uneasy about this pool. Jake removed Spud from the pool and buried him in the backyard. Gina now knew for sure something was bad wrong. She started researching to see if she could find any information on anyone who may have died in the house, or if there were any reports of seeing a little boy in the house. She couldn't find anything about anyone dying in the house, but she did find an article about a local family who had a son abducted 3 years prior and had never been found. The next morning, Gina called the realtor to find out the name of the previous owners. She told Gina their last name was Shadir. This was the same last name as the missing boy. Gina asked if she knew about the missing boy, and she told Gina yes, it was all over the news, but it wasn't relevant to the sale of the house. That's why she didn't tell her. She told Gina they had never found the boy, so they didn't know for sure if he was still alive or not. She also told Gina the little boy was mean. She said some described him as evil. She said the little boy had killed several of the neighbors' pets and the family's dog and cat by putting them in the pool and closing the cover. For a moment, Gina wondered if the little boy was still alive and was hiding in the house. She then remembered the little boy at the top of the stairs and him fading away. She knew he was no longer alive and he was now a spirit, and not a happy spirit. Jake didn't say anything to Gina about what the police had told him, and Gina didn't tell Jake about what she found out about the missing boy. She knew Jake wouldn't believe her and would try to rationalize everything, and this would only make her angry. Gina kind of felt sorry for the little boy and wondered what he had went through before he died. Even though he may have been mean, he didn't deserve to be taken away from his parents and suffer the way he probably suffered at the hands of a stranger. About 3 weeks later, in the middle of the night, Gina heard a little boy talking and noise coming from Davy's room. She tiptoed down the hall and stood outside the door for several minutes listening. She heard a boy's voice talking, laughing, and other noises were coming from the room. She slung the door open, and there he was. The little boy was standing on the other side of the room with a wicked look on his face. Gina tried to talk to the little boy. She asked, "Why are you here? What happened to you? Are you the little boy who was kidnapped?" All of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, the boy was standing in front of her with a knife in his hand. Gina was frozen in terror. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream. "This is how I died," the little boy screamed, and in a split second, he ran the knife across her arm. Gina woke up screaming. She was terrified, looking around the room in horror, screaming, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is Davy? Where is Annie?" Jake grabbed her and started hugging her, saying, "It's just a dream. It's just a dream. Calm down." Gina jumped out of bed and ran to Davy's room, then to Annie's room. They were both sleeping and they were both safe. Gina was hysterical. Jake grabbed her and told her to calm down before she woke the kids. They finally went back to their room and was getting in bed when they noticed blood all over the sheets. Gina looked down at her arm. Right where the little boy sliced the knife down her arm was bleeding profusely. Gina started shaking uncontrollably and passed out, falling on the bed. Things began to escalate from here. Gina would hear the little boy laughing and mumbling words she couldn't understand, all during the day and all during the night. She would look up and he would be standing there glaring at her. She would dream about him every night. She couldn't get him out of her head. Gina didn't know what to do. They had nowhere else to go, but she knew she couldn't take much more. Later that night, Gina had another restless night, so she decided to go downstairs to get her a cup of warm milk and just lay on the couch and watch TV. She was in the kitchen when the door leading down to the basement swung open. The squeaking of the door startled Gina, and she really became frightened when she realized it was the basement door. No one had been down to the basement since they had moved in, and the door had a lock on it at the top, so neither one of the kids could have reached it to unlock it. There was no way Gina was going down in that basement in the dead of night, especially not alone. She walked over and shut the door and locked it again. She finished her milk and went to the den. She turned on the TV and laid back on the couch. Within minutes, she was asleep and, ironically, didn't have any dreams that night. When she got up the next morning, she went in the kitchen to fix her coffee. She looked over at the basement door, and it was standing wide open again. Gina knew she had closed and locked the door the night before. She saw Jake coming downstairs and asked Jake if he had been down in the basement. Jake told her no and asked why. She told him about the door opening on its own the night before, and when she got up this morning, it was open again. He walked over and looked at the latch and said nothing was wrong with the lock. He shut the door and locked it again. Gina felt like something was watching her. She turned and looked in the den, and the little boy was standing there with an extremely mad look on his face. Gina knew he was the one trying to get her to go down in the basement, and there was no way she was going down there. Gina got dressed and went out on the patio to have another cup of coffee. She kept thinking about the basement and wondering why he wanted her to go down in the basement. Was he trying to show her something or tell her something? Was he trying to lure her down there to hurt her? She just couldn't shake the feeling she needed to go down in that basement. The kids finally came down, so Gina fixed them some breakfast. Jake kissed her bye and headed to work. While the kids were eating their breakfast, Davy told his mom he knew that little boy's name. He said it was Devin. Gina told the kids to stop acknowledging the little boy and not to talk to him if they saw him. Gina was getting irritated with everything that had been happening. Gina and the kids spent the morning at the pool, then had lunch. She told the kids they were going down to the basement to explore. The kids were excited. They hadn't been down in the basement and wondered what was down there. They hurried and finished their lunch. Gina went over and unlatched the lock and began to open the door. She was scared, but felt she needed to go down there. This may be the key to freeing themselves of this little boy. Davy said, "Mommy, you know Devin lives in the basement, don't you?" Now this made Gina a little more hesitant, but she flipped the light switch and proceeded down the stairs with the kids closely behind. When they got down the steps, they were looking around. The basement was almost empty, but it looked like someone had started renovations to finish the basement. The strange thing was, only one of the walls in the far back corner was bricked up. You could tell the bricks hadn't been placed by someone who knew what they were doing. Gina walked over and placed her hand on the wall. Then all of a sudden the lights began to flicker. This scared Gina, but somehow she felt compelled to remove those bricks. It was like something took over her body, and she grabbed a sledgehammer that was lying on the floor and started hitting the wall as hard as she could. A foreboding sense of dread came over Gina when she reared back to make the next blow to the wall. What she seen once the sledgehammer hit the wall and made a large hole left a piercing stab in her soul. It was the skeleton of a small child. Gina knew it was the little boy who had went missing. Gina yelled at the kids to get upstairs. She didn't want them to see what she had just saw. Gina followed them up and called the police. Over the next 3 weeks, Gina just couldn't get the image of what she'd seen in the wall out of her mind. But at least nothing else had happened since she had found the little boy, and she thought maybe he's free. Gina was trying to cope and keep it together for the family, but she was beginning to look unhealthy. She had lost a lot of weight, had bags under her eyes, and her skin was very pale. About a week later, the phone rang, and it was a collect call from a corrections facility. She accepted the charges even though she had no idea who was calling. Gina started to say hello when a woman's voice came across the line. The woman said, "As much as I love my son, I feared him more. If he's in the house, get..." Right then the phone line went dead and the lights began to flicker and there were a flutter of shadows on the wall. Gina slowly turned and Devin was standing in the basement door with a bloody knife in his hand. Gina dropped the phone as screams of terror filled their dream house that had now turned into the family's worst nightmare. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If not, you may wake up to your worst nightmare.